Welcome to The Ride, Life, Work, and Wealth podcast with your host, Kris Dureau. Years ago, Kris was a firefighter and a paramedic and witnessed many people not getting another tomorrow, and it shaped who he is now as a financial strategist. Kris doesn't just help people plan for a secure tomorrow, he helps them plan for a better today. Kris lives and works in Burlington, Ontario, and runs an advisory practice named Three Hats Financial. Let's get to it.
Welcome back to The Ride, Life, Work, and Wealth with Kris Dureau of Three Hats Financial. I'm Patrice Sikora. Kris's guest is Kristy Dickinson, the woman behind an app for those with a chronic illness or disability and their families. Chronically Simple is designed to help individuals and their families better manage their health. Kris, first of all, how do you know Kristy?
Thanks, Patrice. Well, I know Kristy and her husband, Simon. I've known them for about, I would say, over 15 years now. I was just mentioning to Kristy that Simon's probably shaking in his boots that the two of us are are recording, and he probably thinks we're going to roast him. But don't worry, Simon, we're going to be nice. So the families have known each other for quite a while. Kristy and Simon also have 3 young kids, roughly around the same age as my wife, Tina, and I. And Kristy's story is really interesting. She'll get obviously into the details of it, but she noticed a huge gap when she was going through all the channels in her path of trying to get diagnosed with a chronic illness, and noticed that there has to be a better way to do this. And she literally created this app from her bed with no previous tech background or anything. It's pretty incredible. And Kristy, I've seen your publications and you in the media and everything else like that, which I think is just awesome because I obviously know your story personal and it's pretty incredible. So thank you very much for coming on. I'm really excited to today's episode, and Kristy's going to go through the app, her background, and just how important this app can simplify and help families with themselves or individuals that have illnesses or disabilities. So Kristy, if you can just kind of go through your story and why you built Chronically Simple and some of the hurdles you had in the early days of being diagnosed with your chronic illness.
Sure. Thank you, Kris. Thanks very much for having me on. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and I love to share about Chronically Simple. To your point, this product came out of need. It literally was built from my bed for the first few years, which is funny. I haven't reflected on that for a while, but totally accurate. So I am a 43-year-old wife, mother of 3 young children, and I have been an entrepreneur for the majority of my career. Prior to getting sick, I ran my own recruitment firm. And so understanding the challenges of building a business was not new to me. After the birth of our 3rd child, our daughter, my health took a drastic turn for the worst. So with each pregnancy, my health deteriorated a little bit more. And what I didn't realize at the time, but now as I'm able to look in hindsight, I was ultimately diagnosed with a rare genetic tissue disorder, and it took me 7 years to get to that diagnosis. I didn't know at the time that I'm not unique. In the rare disease community, unfortunately, it is approximately 7 to 10 years to diagnosis because you're dealing with a smaller subset of patients. So oftentimes the healthcare professionals that you're seeing, they just don't have the knowledge in the condition if you don't present with something that is more, for lack of a better term, mainstream or well-known. So after Sadie was born and my health went downhill pretty quickly, I had to take a year off. I closed down my company, and we called that year my pause because I was 37 years old. I was not ready to retire. I love being a mom, but I'm also a very driven person and I loved working. So the idea of not being able to have that part of my world, I just wasn't ready to let go of. So I went on this pause, and I just received my diagnosis. So we thought we'll give it a year and I'll get my health in order. We'll get a treatment plan, and then I'll get back to life as normal, life that I knew as normal. And that's not what happened, unfortunately. My healthcare is divided still to this day over 3 hospital jurisdictions. So I'm looked after in hospitals in Toronto, in Halton, where I live, and in Hamilton. I have 10 different specialists managing my care. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of details. There's a lot of appointments. I'm on, unfortunately, a ton of medication. I've got different therapies that I take part in. So it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. Back in 2012, 2013, when I was going through this, I went into this thinking honestly that when a doctor swiped my health card, they saw my whole history. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what made sense to me in my business brain. They would
I,
have
mem-
us.
I remember you mentioning that before.
Yeah, it's not the case. I learned
Yeah.
really quickly. So I learned really, really quickly through trial and error that unfortunately, while our healthcare system in Canada is phenomenal, and I'm grateful every single day that I have access to the care that I do, there are some gaps and some pretty big gaps when it comes to communication and knowledge transfer. So we know anyone that is a recurring customer of our healthcare system knows that our doctors operate in silos. Even within the same hospital, sometimes those physicians don't speak to each other. Specifically, where that comes into problems are the access to tests and diagnostic imaging and admission notes. I had 1 month where I was in crisis 3 different times. Unfortunately, one of those times I was up in Parry Sound, one time I was here at home, and one time I was in Hamilton. And all 3 of those hospitals are on different electronic health or hospital record systems. So what ended up happening was, because the hospital couldn't access the notes and didn't have my history, I had 3 CT scans that month.
Huh. Wow.
I mean,
That's incredible, because for anyone that hasn't gone through that with themselves or a family member, you would think that it is more connected. And first of all, to go back, like, kudos to you and Simon to getting through that, like, almost a decade. And the neat thing about all of this is I just remember those years because we've known each other for that long,
mhm.
and the hurdles that you guys were going through, and to now see where everything is. It's great to see that you guys came out on the other end of this, especially with you developing this for so many other people to not have to go through that frustration, stress, and headache. That's just fantastic. So then the thing is, what people could be listening to is that, well, okay, I don't have any experience in this. I just recently got diagnosed, or have a family member or an older parent. How do I even start with this? Because I have no experience with any of this. So how can I be an advocate for my own health or my parents' health, because I don't have any background in knowing how this whole system works?
Absolutely. Well, you used my favorite word there, advocate. And Chronically Simple is truly about advocating and empowering. To me, it's hard to advocate for yourself or for a loved one if you don't have their information. So what I wanted, and what makes Chronically Simple unique, is if you go into the App Store or Google Play, there are tens of thousands of health and wellness apps out there. You've got apps that can track medication and appointments and diet and symptoms. What is unique, and if you're new, if you have just recently been diagnosed, I can tell you that managing an illness at times can feel like a full-time job. So what I struggled with was, during, my time when I was trying to figure out my new normal, I couldn't cognitively manage 10 different apps to help me keep track of things. I needed basically one. I needed a project manager. So that is what Chronically Simple is. It is one secure, centralized hub that helps you keep everything together. And that enables you to better advocate for yourself. If I had Chronically Simple that month that I was in crisis, even if I couldn't speak for myself, Simon could have pulled up his app, because it is shareable, and shown the doctors, this is her last CT scan. These are the last antibiotics she was on. This is what she needs. To better advocate for ourselves, we have to have access to that information. Never is it more important than the pandemic time right now, where for the past 4 months, advocates and family members haven't been allowed to go into hospitals with their loved ones. So people are going in alone. And if they don't have their medical history at the palm of their hand, the doctors aren't going to have the full picture that they need to provide them the best treatment or the best care possible.
Kristy, Patrice here. Quick
Yes.
question. This app, it seems Yes, the healthcare system is definitely complicated, no question, but this app seems to offer confidence and the ability to empower the user. Was that your goal?
100%. So what I'm most proud of about this app, and getting back to why did I build it? Kris knows I didn't set out to start a company. I have no tech background. I wanted to help people because I struggled so much to try and keep everything together. I had binders. And if you speak to anyone that lives with a chronic illness, whether or not it's cancer, diabetes, a rare disease, a neurological disease, those people or their caregivers, their family members that care for them and advocate for them will all tell you they keep track of everything and they keep them in binders or folders. It's paper-based. So Chronically Simple is the ability to digitize those binders, keep all of that information together. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And one thing, too, we keep saying chronic illnesses here, chronically simple, chronic illnesses. This is also for people with disabilities, correct?
Absolutely. So I built this app. Every data point in this app comes from either a patient, a person like me, or a caregiver, a mom, a dad, a sister, a daughter that have experienced pain points within our healthcare system. So an example I can give you is our expenses section. That was built from our pediatric caregivers, our moms and dads that care for children, either, children that are on any healthcare journey. They needed a place where they could keep track of all of their medical expenses, because when you're applying for disability tax credits, grants, funding, school programs, it was overwhelming to them because all of those grants and applications, some are due every 6 months, some are due every year. So you always need to keep all of your receipts. You have to tie them to the healthcare professional that's helping you. It's, again, we go back to full-time job. So our expenses section was built from the feedback of those parents, people like you and I that live it. The lived experience, this app is entirely created by lived experience.
You're reminding me so much. I have not gone through an illness or disability myself or with a family member, but when you keep mentioning the binders and it being a full-time job, I just remember a very long time ago when I was a paramedic, we would transport. It wasn't always critical calls. You would sometimes get calls from just to transport a patient to a hospital for an appointment. And I remember I was quite young when I was doing that job, but going to these homes and getting disabled children that had appointments with healthcare providers. And some of those rides in the back of the ambulance would be quite long because they were in rural settings. And you just would speak to the parents and they just looked exhausted. But they would have, like you said, it's so funny you say that, the binders. And I remember one particular patient, the mother climbed in the back of the ambulance with me, and it was like a cardboard box of bananas, like it was the outside, and she had it just filled with binders. And I just couldn't believe she was bringing that to this one appointment for one healthcare provider. And now I have to admit, she knew almost everything of this child's disability, but she just was exhausted. And she was getting into some things personal too, on how exhausted she was on just trying to manage this on top of dealing with her other children. She was a wife, her job. And it's just so interesting when you're saying that, because that's the vision that came into my head as soon as you mentioned the binders. So
unfortunately, your story and this, all of the stories that I have, Kris, they're not unique. Any parent that you speak to, they are the primary caregiver and the advocate for their child. So they do know that child better than any healthcare professional ever would. They live with them 24/7. So having access to all of that information and being able to knowledge share, that's where the advocating and the empowering comes from. My colleague Brenda, that helped me build the caregiver section of Chronically Simple, her son has cerebral palsy and profound hearing loss, and he's incredibly medically complex. He had over 200 specialist appointments in his first year of life. She had 7 binders of his medical information, and she stopped collecting it when he was 5.
wow. Now, Okay, so let's get into that then. Age, illness, cancer. Is there any limit on this, or is it
So
for a specific
it's a
crime?
good
Yeah.
question, and I'm glad that you asked me. When I started out, I thought, okay, there's a hole in the system, and me being me, I'm like, I need to fix this. But what I realized when I talked to my network and I talked to the people from recruiting, I'd built up a really big personal network. And when I went to them and I said, guys, I'm struggling to keep my health information together and to keep on top of my care. How do you guys do it? And then everyone came back and said, we have binders, like, we do it manually. So then I went back to them and I said, where are the pain points? And what I learned and what I built Chronically Simple on was I can't focus just on rare disease or just on, say, neurological disorders like cerebral palsy or traumatic brain injury, because we all experience the same pain points, regardless of what healthcare journey we're on. My girlfriend that was on a breast cancer journey helped me build out part and sections of the app. The interesting part of that story was she went through her journey. She finished her treatment. She was deemed cancer free, which we celebrated. And then 6 months later, they found a small spot on her lung and she needed the app again. So what that taught me, what that experience was, is not only is it important to manage your care when you are diagnosed, so at time of diagnosis or early in your journey, this really is a habit that, like, I have so many users that have no condition. They're just managing it for themselves, or they keep track of their children's doctor's appointments, immunizations, ear infections, antibiotics, blood tests, anything that comes up, so that if or when a crisis occurs, again, you can advocate because you have that whole history.
Now, she's diagnosed with breast cancer. She goes through the treatment. Fantastic. She's now clear. 6 months or a year later, she can just go back into that app or re-sign up, or how does that work? And is the information, and obviously the information is not lost?
Yes. So we keep, now this will get a bit too techie for you and for your listeners probably, but again, because I'm a user and security and privacy is very important to me, we built our tool to adhere to the highest of the internet privacy legislations. There are two governing bodies called the GDPR and the CCPA. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we kept people's history stored securely in the case of that they ever have to come back. So you have two options. If you choose to cancel your subscription and you have the right to be forgotten, that's under the GDPR. So if you email us and you say, I'd like to cancel and I would like you to delete all my information, that happens immediately. The second option is, I would like to cancel, I'm healthy, I don't need this anymore. We will keep your information stored securely for a year in the hopes that, hopefully you won't need to come back. But if you did, or if you decided, I liked the peace of mind of having this, although I don't use it every day, I like knowing that it's there, I'm going to keep it. You'll have access to all that information for a year. That way you don't have to restart the whole process again.
So the information is obviously secure, because that's of course some people's concern. Obviously, they're not going to type in, okay, today I have a headache, and all of a sudden now, like Facebook, everywhere they go is going to be popping up Tylenol ads. It's not
100,
anything like that.
absolutely not.
Yeah,
There is
yeah.
we are a user-based app. And what makes us special is that our users are confident enough in our technology and our security and privacy policy to enter in their symptoms multiple times a day, to be honest about how they are feeling, and to share that information with their chosen care teams. So I've partnered with external counsel that specialize in data and app privacy in order to ensure that we have a privacy policy and terms and conditions that very clearly outline that you own your data and it is not sold or shared. You will never find it on Facebook or any other privacy breaches. This is so important in order for our users to feel safe to accurately report how they're feeling.
Of course. And I wouldn't expect obviously any less, but of course, I just wanted to make sure listeners understood that. That's great. Okay. So you and I have talked a lot about sandwich generation, which for our listeners is a lot of people anywhere aged from 40 to 60, where they're caring for young children and elderly parents. And Kristy, when we had our conversation before, it was pretty incredible when you're showing me what the app it can do for, say, the family member or caregiver, however you want to word it, and how you can monitor your parents taking medications or appointments or knowing if they've missed a medication. I thought that was unbelievable because I have so many clients exactly in that sandwich generation where it's hard enough and stressful enough to be raising young family, but then to have an elderly parent or family member having an illness or disability. This really caught my attention. So let's go through a day of my mother has an illness. We both have woken up and I'm working. Kind of give me a couple scenarios of what you've helped clients with in that exact situation.
Of course. So our medication section has the ability, or what we do is we send notifications to the home screen of your phone, because again, the entire point of this app is to keep it simple for both the person using it and their care team. When your mom wakes up and she has to take her, 4 pills at 7 a.m., she'll get a notification that pops up on her screen. Hi, Jane, it's time to take your Tylenol. She just clicks mark taken. And then that notifies you, Kris, on your phone, mom took her medication at 7:02 a.m. Where it's important is if your mom is supposed to take her medication at 7 and you don't get the notification, you will get an alert at 7:15 that says mom hasn't taken her medication yet. So it's a prompt for you to step away from whatever you're doing and give her a quick call just to make sure, hey, mom, did you take your meds? Yes, I did. I forgot to mark it. Or no, I didn't. Thank you so much for calling. I'll take them now. We know that we've got Parkinson's patients are a really good example. They are on upwards of 30 medications a day, and they are timely. There are negative consequences if they don't take them at their specific times. So if you are a son or a daughter caring for your mom or dad who has Parkinson's, you don't want to have to step out of your day every hour when they're supposed to take their medications. So this way, you're in a meeting, you look down at your phone, you can see mom took her medication. It's an ease of mind for you.
That's great. Now, so what's another example would be, obviously your family member is going to have a ton of appointments. And you had mentioned,
Yes.
even like with the environment right now, even if you weren't working, say myself and my mom has appointments, I wouldn't be able to go because of the situation we're in with the whole pandemic. So how can I make sure that certain questions are being addressed when she's going by herself? And is there a feature on that?
There is, yes. So in our appointment section, we have a screen for pre-appointment notes and post-appointment notes. So as a member of her care team, you would type in, Mom, I want you to talk to the doctor about this, 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 and this. When she goes to the doctor, she pulls that up and she has all of your questions there. When she leaves, the app will prompt her to enter her post-appointment notes. And at that point, she can either type them or we have a talk to text feature. So I spoke to the doctor about this symptom. He said it's nothing to worry about. I have to follow up with an MRI in 3 months, and I'm going to start a new medication. She presses save. You get an alert on your phone. You can see, if your mom's appointment's at 10:30 and she's done at 10:45, she doesn't even have to pick up the phone to call you. You can see the post-appointment notes updated in real time.
Wow. And the biggest thing at that age group of 70 plus, sometimes some of them aren't exactly the most tech savvy, but it sounds like you guys have addressed that very well with the app, with such things as just tapping on a microphone and her verbally recording it and it switching it to text. And that's pretty incredible.
Thank you. We did try and take into account accessibility, obviously, is vital, but also for the demographic. So being, I'm 43, my dad is almost 70. I've got kids aging between 7 and 13. We're managing a lot. And when I first built this, that's why we have a web-based platform as well as a mobile app. My dad is more likely to enter in his information on his laptop than he is on his cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Test every feature with him to make sure that he can navigate it, that it's easy, that it's not confusing for him. If my 70-year-old father can use it, I feel like and he's not that tech savvy, trust me.
Yeah. No, that's great. So then how does someone even get more information about this? Where do they go to contact you in this? And then what's the cost of this and how does all of that work?
Of course. So we have a website. We're chronicallysimple.com. We are live in the App Store and Google Play for Android. So you can search up our app there. We're a subscription-based service, like a Netflix or a Dropbox. We are $9.99 a month, and that it gives you one. So you would enter in either as a patient or a caregiver, put in all of the information. It is shareable to as many people as you want to invite. You upload as many documents. There's no extra charges, just one flat fee. Right now, we've got a free trial in market in response to the COVID pandemic, being that the medically vulnerable community is who we support. We didn't want there to be any financial barriers to access this tool in light of the current economic situation. So we changed our 30-day free trial to a 6-month free trial. So when you sign up for the app, you can use it for free for 6 months.
That's great. I just want to listeners, that's $9.99. I just want to make sure
Sorry.
that it came across.
Yeah, we're $1,000 a month. We wanted to make it really affordable.
It just came across quick, so I wanted to make sure they understood that was clarified.
Yeah. Sorry.
$1,000 a month. Let me know where I can buy that stock.
Yeah. Seriously, yeah.
Kristy, another question here for me. Looking forward, this is just an awesome app. Is there any plan to possibly allow it to be integrated into a provider's IT system? You would go in and plug in a USB connection or something like that?
We are looking at that right now. EMR connectivity, EHR connectivity. So for our listeners, that's your electronic medical record and your electronic hospital record. That integration is what I've been working on for the past 4 years. Right now, our process is still manual. It's still up to patients and their families to collect all of the information, make sure that they upload it into the app. It's a lot of work. And my life goal is to get patients and their families access to their medical records and then integrate that within the app. So as I'm in my doctor's office and they're typing notes in my electronic medical record, that would populate automatically into the app. We're actively working on that feature. It is top of my roadmap.
That is awesome.
Great. The other thing I'm going to just mention to my listeners, Kristy, because you were gracious to offer our listeners upgrade for a 12-month free trial, and that if they wanted a code, they can contact us and we will happily give them that code so they can get the 12 months free for Chronically Simple.
Absolutely. I'm so honored that you asked me to chat with you today. And I'm very happy to offer your listeners, a free gift for listening to us chat for this time. What I would ask is if you have feedback when your users do download us and give us a try, my email is kristy@chronicallysimple.com. So if you have feedback as to how this app could make your life easier, please just email me and let me know. That is how we have innovated and we continue to innovate to bring new features to market to help make your lives easier.
Makes sense to make it better for them, for sure. And then for any listeners that want that promo, please just contact us through our website at threehatsfinancial.ca.
All right. Thanks, everybody. This is an exciting option for those with disabilities or a chronic illness, Kristy. Thank you so much. Kristy Dickinson of Chronically Simple. And thank you, Kris Dureau of Three Hats Financial, for highlighting Kristy's story. For more episodes of The Ride, Life, Work, and Wealth, use the subscribe button on this page. And you can also share with the share button. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to The Ride, Life, Work, and Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. All comments are of a general nature and should not be relied upon as individual advice. The views and opinions expressed in this commentary may not necessarily reflect those of IPC Investment Corporation. While every attempt is made to ensure accuracy, facts and figures are not guaranteed. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.